The massive space station hung in the void like a silver jewel against the stars. Nexus Prime was the size of a small moon, its surface covered with docking bays, communication arrays, and meeting halls. Today, it buzzed with activity as ships from across the galaxy arrived for the 847th Galactic Summit. Ambassador Vextar of the Zephyrian Republic stepped out of his transport and looked around the main docking bay. Thousands of different species moved through the area. Some walked on two legs like him, others crawled on multiple limbs, and a few floated in protective bubbles filled with their home atmosphere. The air hummed with translation devices working overtime to convert thousands of languages. "Another summit, another headache," muttered his aide, a young Zephyrian named Kylon. "Do you think anything will actually get done this time?" Vextar's blue skin darkened slightly, a sign of amusement among his people. "The same things always get done. The hegemony of Keth will demand more mining rights. The Vorthan Collective will complain about trade routes, and the Krex Empire will threaten someone." They made their way through the crowded corridors toward the main assembly hall. The walls were lined with flags and symbols representing the 12,000 civilizations that made up the Galactic Council. It was an impressive sight even after all these years. The assembly hall itself was enormous. Circular tiers of seats rose up from a central speaking platform, each section designed for different types of beings. Some areas had water for aquatic species, others had different atmospheric mixes, and a few were kept in complete darkness for species that lived without light. As Vextar took his seat, he noticed Chancellor Mordak of the Zephyrian Republic approaching the speaking platform. The old politician moved slowly, his age showing in every step. Mordak had been attending these summits for over 200 years. "Welcome, beings of the galaxy," Mordak's voice echoed through the hall, translated instantly into thousands of languages. "We gather once again to discuss the matters that affect us all. Trade, territory, and the laws that bind us together in peace." The first few hours followed the usual pattern. Representatives stood to voice complaints about border disputes, trade disagreements, and resource allocation. The hegemony of Keth, a warlike species with gray skin and sharp teeth, demanded access to 3 new star systems. The crystalline Vorthan complained that pirates were attacking their merchant ships. A dozen minor species argued over who had the right to colonize an uninhabited planet. During a break, Vextar found himself in conversation with Ambassador Threnx of the Altarian Federation. Threnx was an insectoid being with 4 arms and compound eyes that reflected light like mirrors. Same old arguments, Threnx clicked, his mandibles moving in what passed for a smile among his people. "Sometimes I wonder if we make any real progress at these summits." "At least everyone shows up," Vextar replied. "Well, almost everyone. Oh yes, the usual absent parties. Let me see." Threnx consulted his datapad. "The Voidwalkers sent their regrets again. The machine intelligence is still in sleep mode. And of course, Earth never responds." "Earth?" Vextar frowned. The name was familiar, but he couldn't quite remember why. Small planet in the outer spiral arm. "They've been invited to every summit for the past 300 years and never once replied. Not even to say no." Vextar searched his memory. "Are they extinct?" "Unknown. The records show their star system was surveyed about 400 years ago. The report classified it as uninhabited, but somehow they stayed on the invitation list. Bureaucratic error, most likely." When the summit resumed, Chancellor Mordak was discussing territorial assignments. Several star systems had been left unclaimed for decades, and various species were requesting the right to colonize them. "The Sol system remains unassigned," Mordak announced. "The species listed as inhabitants, designation human, have not responded to any communication attempts. As per Galactic Law Section 47B, unclaimed systems may be assigned to applicant species after a period of 300 years. Commander Grack of the hegemony of Keth stood up. His species was known for their aggressive expansion and military might. "The hegemony requests assignment of the Sol system. Our surveys show it contains valuable resources. A few other species made competing claims, but none argued very hard. The Sol system was far from major trade routes and considered of minor importance. After a brief discussion, the assignment was approved. The system now officially belonged to the hegemony of Keth, though they showed little interest in actually traveling there to claim it. Meanwhile, on a small blue planet in that very system, Dr. Sarah Chen was working late in her laboratory. She was part of a team developing new propulsion systems for humanity's growing space exploration program. Humans had been traveling to other planets in their solar system for over a century now, but interstellar travel remained beyond their reach. Sarah had no idea that her world had just been given away to an alien empire. Earth's governments had no knowledge of the Galactic Council, the thousands of species that filled the galaxy, or the summits where the fate of worlds was decided. Humanity continued its daily existence, completely unaware that they were considered either extinct or unworthy of notice by the rest of the galaxy. The human race had always been curious about life beyond their world. They searched the skies with radio telescopes, sent probes to distant planets, and dreamed of the day they might meet other intelligent species. They had no way of knowing that those other species had been trying to contact them for centuries. The problem lay in the original survey conducted 400 years earlier. A robotic probe from the Galactic Council had entered the Sol system during humanity's medieval period. The probe's sensors were designed to detect advanced technology, spaceflight, energy weapons, faster-than-light communication. Finding none of these things, it had classified Earth as uninhabited and moved on. The classification was entered into the galactic database and never updated. Even as humanity advanced, built cities, developed nuclear power, and reached for the stars, the galaxy continued to see Earth as an empty world. Invitation signals were sent to coordinates in space rather than to the planet itself, broadcasted on frequencies that human technology couldn't detect. Back at Nexus Prime, the summit was winding down. Trade agreements had been signed, territorial disputes resolved, and military conflicts postponed for another year. The representatives began to file out, returning to their ships and their homeworlds. Vextar gathered his belongings and prepared to leave. As he walked through the corridors, he passed the wall of flags again. Somewhere in that vast display was a small blue banner with a yellow star, representing Earth and its human inhabitants. It was faded and forgotten, lost among the thousands of other symbols. Another successful summit, Kylan commented as they boarded their transport. Indeed, Vextar replied, settling into his seat. Though I can't help but wonder about those humans. What kind of species ignores the entire galaxy for 3 centuries? Maybe they're dead, Kylan suggested. Or maybe they just don't care about the rest of us. The transport pulled away from Nexus Prime, carrying its passengers back to their corner of the galaxy. Behind them, the great space station began preparations for the next summit, scheduled for 3 years in the future. The invitations would go out as always, including one to a small blue world that had never once replied. But unknown to everyone at that summit, things were about to change. Deep in human space, scientists were making breakthroughs that would alter the balance of power in the galaxy forever. Captain Sarah Chen floated in the zero gravity of her ship's bridge, watching the stars through the main viewport. The exploration vessel Horizon's Edge was humanity's most advanced ship, capable of traveling faster than anything humans had ever built before. But even with their new fusion drives, it had taken them 6 months to reach the edge of their solar system. Captain, we're picking up something unusual, reported Lieutenant Commander James Park from his station. There's some kind of artificial object out here. Sarah pushed off from the viewport and glided over to look at his screen. The object appeared as a small blip on their sensors, about the size of a car and clearly not natural. It was perfectly round and seemed to be made of some kind of metal. Any signs of activity? Sarah asked. Negative, Captain. It's just sitting there. Looks like it's been here for a very long time. Sarah made her decision quickly. Let's bring it aboard. Use the cargo bay. The Horizon's Edge moved slowly toward the mysterious object. Their robotic arms carefully grabbed it and pulled it into the ship's cargo bay. Once it was secured, Sarah and her team went to examine it more closely. The object was unlike anything humans had ever seen. It was perfectly smooth and seemed to be made of a material that changed color, depending on how the light hit it. Strange symbols were carved into its surface. Symbols that clearly came from an intelligent species. It's some kind of probe, said Dr. Amanda Foster, the ship's science officer. Look at these sensor arrays, and this looks like a communication dish. Sarah walked around the object slowly. After decades of wondering if humanity was alone in the universe, here was proof that other intelligent life existed. The question was, what did this probe want? Can we activate it? Sarah asked. Dr. Foster ran her scanner over the surface. There's definitely power inside. Very advanced power source, unlike anything we use. But I think I can find the activation switch. She pressed her hand against one of the symbols. Immediately, the object began to glow. Lights flickered across its surface and a low humming sound filled the cargo bay. Then, without warning, it projected a holographic display into the air above it. The display showed star charts, but not like any humans had seen before. Instead of just showing nearby systems, it displayed thousands of stars, with lines connecting them like a vast network. Words appeared in the display, but they were in an alien language. "Recording everything," Dr. Foster said, her voice excited. "This is incredible, Captain. This shows hundreds of star systems, all connected somehow." The display changed, showing what looked like a list. Names appeared next to coordinates, thousands and thousands of them. Then something caught Sarah's attention. At the bottom of a very long list, she saw something familiar. "Sol," she read aloud. "That's our sun's name." The display zoomed in on their solar system. Information appeared next to Earth's image, but again in the alien language. However, some things were universal. Numbers, coordinates, dates. "Dr. Foster, can your computer try to translate any of this?" "Already working on it, Captain." "The mathematical relationships should help us understand their language. Give me a few hours." While Dr. Foster worked on translation, Sarah contacted Earth. The message would take hours to reach home. But this discovery was too important to wait. "Command, this is Captain Chen aboard Horizon's Edge. We have made first contact with evidence of alien intelligence. Sending all data now. Request immediate consultation with linguistics and xenology departments." The response from Earth was immediate excitement. Every government leader, scientist, and military officer wanted to know more. Sarah's discovery dominated news headlines within hours. 2 days later, Dr. Foster had her breakthrough. "Captain, you need to see this," she called urgently. Sarah hurried to the science lab where Dr. Foster had been working around the clock. The alien probe sat on the examination table, still glowing softly. "I've managed to translate portions of the data," Dr. Foster said, her face pale. "Sarah, this is an invitation system. This probe has been sending invitations to Earth for over 300 years. "Invitations to what?" Dr. Foster brought up the translated text on her screen. "Something called the Galactic Council. Look at this. It's a list of every intelligent species in the galaxy, thousands of them, and they've been trying to contact us since the 1700s. Sarah stared at the screen in disbelief. "What kind of invitations?" "To galactic summits, diplomatic meetings, trade negotiations. Sarah, there's an entire galactic civilization out there, and they think we've been ignoring them for centuries." The implications were staggering. Humanity wasn't alone. They were part of a galaxy filled with intelligent life. But somehow they had missed every attempt at contact. "How is that possible?" Sarah asked. "Why didn't we ever receive these messages?" Dr. Foster pulled up more data. The probe was supposed to detect our civilization and then establish contact. But look at the date of the last survey update. Over 400 years ago. It classified Earth as uninhabited. Uninhabited? But humans were already living in cities by then. Yes, but we didn't have space technology. The probe was looking for signs of advanced civilization, spacecraft, energy weapons, faster-than-light communication. When it didn't find those things, it marked us as primitive and moved on. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "So all these invitations have been going where?" "To empty space, mostly. The coordinates in the system are wrong. They've been broadcasting to a point about 1,000,000 kilometers away from Earth." The full picture was becoming clear. For centuries, an alien civilization had been trying to include humanity in galactic affairs. They had sent invitation after invitation to what they thought was humanity's location. But due to an outdated survey, those invitations had been going to empty space. "Dr. Foster, what else does this probe tell us about this galactic council?" "Quite a lot, actually. There are over 12,000 member species. They meet regularly to discuss trade, territorial disputes, and galactic law. And Sarah, they've been making decisions about our solar system." "What kind of decisions?" Dr. Foster's expression grew troubled. "According to the latest data in this probe, our solar system has been assigned to something called the hegemony of Keth. Apparently, when a species doesn't respond to invitations for 300 years, their territory can be claimed by others." Sarah felt her knees go weak. "Are you telling me that aliens now own our solar system?" "Legally, yes. Though it seems like they haven't bothered to actually come here and claim it. They probably think it's still uninhabited." Sarah activated her communication system immediately. "Priority message to Earth Command. We have a situation that requires immediate attention from the highest levels of government. Over the next several hours, as Sarah's report reached Earth, emergency meetings were called in every major capital. The President of the United Earth Government convened an emergency session with military leaders, scientists, and diplomats. The news was both exciting and terrifying. Humanity wasn't alone, but they had accidentally become squatters in their own solar system. According to galactic law, Earth now belonged to an alien empire that might show up at any time to claim it. Admiral Marcus Webb, Earth's top military commander, was brought in to assess the situation. After reviewing all the data from the probe, his conclusion was grim. "We have two choices," he told the assembled leaders. "We can try to contact this Galactic Council and explain the misunderstanding, hoping they'll be reasonable. Or we can prepare for the possibility that they won't be." "What do you mean?" asked the president. "I mean, we need to be ready to defend our home if these aliens decide to enforce their legal claim to our solar system. We need to show them that Earth is not uninhabited and that humans are not going to give up their world without a fight." The president looked around the room at the faces of humanity's leaders. "How long do we have?" Admiral Webb consulted the probe's data. "According to this, the next galactic summit is in 8 months. If we're going to make contact, that would be our best opportunity. Then we have 8 months to prepare," the president said. "Admiral Webb, I want you to develop plans for both diplomacy and defense. Dr. Foster, continue studying that probe. We need to learn everything we can about this Galactic Council." As the meeting broke up, Admiral Webb stayed behind. He had an idea forming in his mind, one that would require humanity to make the boldest statement in their history. If Earth was going to join the galactic community, they needed to do it in a way that would make it clear that humans were not to be underestimated. The next 8 months would determine humanity's place in the galaxy. Admiral Marcus Webb stood in the command center deep beneath the Swiss Alps, surrounded by the best military minds humanity had to offer. Holographic displays showed shipyards across Earth's solar system, each one working at maximum capacity. In the 8 months since Captain Chen's discovery, humanity had mobilized on a scale not seen since the global wars of the 22nd century. "Status report," Webb commanded. Colonel Maria Santos, his chief of staff, stepped forward. "Production is ahead of schedule, Admiral. We now have 847 completed battleships, with the remaining 153 expected to finish within the next 2 weeks. Webb nodded, studying the displays that showed humanity's greatest achievement. Each battleship was over 2 kilometers long, bristling with weapons and defensive systems that represented the pinnacle of human engineering. They were not the largest ships in the galaxy. The probe's data had shown them images of alien vessels that dwarfed anything humans had built. But they were uniquely human in their design. "What about weapons testing?" Webb asked. "Exceeding expectations," replied Dr. Sarah Kim, the project's chief weapons designer. "The railguns are performing at 110% of projected capability. The nuclear torpedo systems are ready for deployment, and the electronic warfare suites have passed all simulations." Webb allowed himself a small smile. While other species had focused on energy weapons and exotic technologies, humans had perfected the art of kinetic warfare. Each battleship carried weapons that could accelerate projectiles to significant fractions of light speed, and their nuclear arsenals were based on centuries of human expertise with atomic weapons. "Admiral," interrupted Lieutenant Jackson from the communication station, "we're receiving a priority transmission from the diplomatic team." Webb walked over to the communication console. On the screen appeared Ambassador Elena Rodriguez, humanity's most experienced diplomat, who had been leading the effort to understand galactic politics through analysis of the alien probe. "Admiral, we've made significant progress in understanding the structure of the Galactic Council," Rodriguez reported. "The good news is that they appear to be fundamentally diplomatic. Most disputes are resolved through negotiation rather than warfare. And the bad news? The bad news is that they have very strict rules about territorial claims. Once a system is legally assigned to a species, changing that assignment requires either the consent of the new owners or a demonstration of superior claim through what they call species capability assessment." Webb frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means we need to prove that humans are capable of defending and controlling our solar system. In galactic terms, that means demonstrating military strength sufficient to maintain our borders. This confirmed Webb's strategy. From the beginning, he had argued that humanity needed to arrive at the Galactic Summit not as supplicants begging for recognition, but as equals demanding respect. "How are our pilots coming along?" Webb asked Colonel Santos. "Better than we hoped. It turns out that human reflexes and adaptability give our pilots significant advantages in space combat simulations. Captain Chen has been particularly helpful in training them, given her experience with the deep space exploration. Captain Sarah Chen had become something of a celebrity since her discovery of the alien probe. More importantly, she had proven to be an excellent teacher, helping to train the first generation of human space combat pilots. The psychological profiles are interesting too," added Dr. Jennifer Walsh, the fleet's chief psychologist. "Our pilots show unusual resilience under stress compared to the baseline data we've extrapolated from the alien probe. Humans seem to perform better in chaotic situations than most species." Webb walked over to look at the tactical displays showing the positions of the completed battleships. They were spread throughout the solar system, hidden behind asteroids and moons, conducting final training exercises. Each ship carried a crew of 500, representing the best of humanity's military personnel. "What about our intelligence on potential opponents?" Webb asked. Commander David Park, head of the Intelligence Analysis Division, pulled up a holographic display showing the various alien species. "The hegemony of Keth are definitely our primary concern. They're the ones who legally own our solar system now. Military-focused, aggressive expansion policy, superior numbers, but their tactics seem to rely heavily on brute force." The display changed to show Keth military formations. "They prefer large formations of heavily armored ships with powerful frontal weapons. Very disciplined, very predictable. Our wargame simulations suggest that human tactics focused on mobility and unpredictability could be effective against them." "What about allies?" Webb asked. "Possible," Ambassador Rodriguez answered from the communication link. "Many species seem to fear Keth expansion. The Zephyrian Republic in particular has had several border disputes with them. If we can convince other species that humanity represents a stabilizing force rather than a threat, we might find support." Webb nodded. This was the delicate balance they needed to achieve. Strong enough to demand respect but not so aggressive as to unite the galaxy against them. "Admiral," called out Lieutenant Jackson again, "we're receiving a transmission from the Mars shipyards." The display switched to show Captain Rebecca Thompson, the commander overseeing the final construction phase. "Admiral, I'm pleased to report that Battleship 1000 has just completed its final systems check. The fleet is ready." A cheer went up in the command center. 1,000 battleships, more military spacecraft than humanity had ever dreamed of building. Each one represented months of work by thousands of people, incorporating technologies that had been developed specifically for this moment. Webb felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. In just 2 weeks, he would lead this fleet to the Galactic Summit at Nexus Prime. The decisions made there would determine whether humanity joined the galactic community as equals or became subjects of an alien empire. "Ladies and gentlemen," Webb announced to the assembled staff, "it's time for the final briefing." The holographic displays changed to show the route to Nexus Prime. Using the navigational data from the alien probe, human scientists had calculated the journey would take exactly 7 days with their fastest ships. "The plan is simple," Webb began. "We arrive at Nexus Prime during the opening ceremonies of the 851st Galactic Summit. We request permission to address the assembly. We explain the situation regarding Earth's missed invitations, and we formally request recognition as a sovereign species." "And if they refuse?" asked Colonel Santos. "Then we make it clear that the Sol system is not available for colonization. We don't start a war, but we make it absolutely clear that any attempt to claim our home system will be met with resistance." Dr. Walsh raised her hand. "Admiral, what if they see our arrival as an act of aggression?" "That's a risk we have to take, but consider the alternative. If we arrive with a small diplomatic ship, we're just another minor species begging for scraps. If we arrive with 1,000 battleships, we're a force that demands to be taken seriously." Ambassador Rodriguez nodded from the communication screen. "The psychology makes sense. Galactic politics appear to be based largely on perceived strength. Species that can't defend themselves don't get respect." Webb looked around the room at the faces of humanity's leaders. "Are there any other questions?" Commander Park raised his hand. "What about first contact protocols? We've never actually communicated with aliens before." "We've prepared for that," Rodriguez answered. "The probe's translation matrix has been integrated into our communication systems. We should be able to communicate with most species, at least on a basic level." Webb nodded. "Remember, people, we're not going there to conquer anyone. We're going there to take our place as equals in the galactic community, but we're going to do it on our terms." Over the next 2 weeks, the final preparations were completed. Supplies were loaded, final crew assignments were made, and last-minute technical upgrades were installed. The battleships were the most advanced machines humanity had ever built, but they were also uniquely human in their design philosophy. Where alien ships prioritized single powerful weapons, human ships carried redundant systems and multiple weapon types. Where alien ships relied on sophisticated computers, human ships were designed to function even with damaged electronics. Where alien ships followed predictable tactical doctrine, human ships were designed for flexibility and adaptation. On the day of departure, Admiral Webb stood on the bridge of his flagship, the UES Defiance. Through the viewports, he could see the other 9999 battleships arranged in perfect formation. Each ship represented not just military power, but the hopes and dreams of an entire species. "All ships report ready, Admiral," announced Captain Chen, who had been given command of the escort squadron. Webb took a deep breath. "Signal all ships. Begin jump sequence." One by one, the human battleships activated their faster-than-light drives and disappeared into hyperspace. They were heading toward a meeting that would change the course of human history forever. Behind them, Earth continued its daily rotation, its people going about their lives largely unaware that their future was being decided in the depths of space. But in 7 days, the galaxy would learn that humanity was ready to claim its place among the stars. The 851st Galactic Summit was proceeding exactly as every other summit for the past 800 years. Ambassador Vextar sat in his assigned seat, half listening to the opening ceremonies while reviewing trade agreements on his personal datapad. Around him, thousands of representatives from across the galaxy filled the massive assembly hall of Nexus Prime. Chancellor Mordak was giving his traditional opening address, welcoming delegates and outlining the agenda. The speech was largely ceremonial. Everyone knew what would be discussed. The same territorial disputes, the same trade disagreements, the same complaints about border security. "And so we gather once again in the spirit of cooperation and mutual understanding," Mordak droned on. Vextar was about to return to his datapad when every alarm in the station began blaring simultaneously. Emergency lights flashed red throughout the assembly hall, and the holographic displays around the chamber switched from ceremonial images to tactical readouts. The massive main display at the center of the hall showed the space around Nexus Prime. Vextar's breath caught in his throat as he saw what had triggered the alarms. Ships were dropping out of hyperspace in perfect formation around the station. Not just a few ships, hundreds of them. "Unknown vessels, this is Nexus Prime Control," came the voice of the station commander over the communication system. "You are entering restricted space during a diplomatic summit. Identify yourselves immediately." The response came in clear galactic standard, but with an accent that no one in the assembly hall recognized. "Nexus Prime Control. This is Admiral Marcus Webb of the United Earth Government. We are here to attend the Galactic Summit as representatives of humanity and to address matters concerning our solar system." A wave of confusion swept through the assembly hall. Earth, humanity. Most delegates had never heard these terms before. Ambassador Thranks leaned over to Vextar, his compound eyes reflecting the red emergency lights. "Didn't Earth get assigned to the hegemony of Keth last summit?" Before Vextar could answer, Commander Grack of the hegemony of Keth stood up in his section, his gray skin darker than usual with anger. "These humans are trespassing on Keth territory. The Sol system was legally assigned to us." On the main display, more ships continued to appear. Vextar counted them quickly, 200, 300, 500. Each vessel was roughly the same size as a Keth heavy cruiser, but their design was unlike anything in the galactic database. "Admiral Webb," came the voice of Nexus Prime Control, "we show no record of humanity in our diplomatic registry. Please state your authority to attend this summit." "Control, we have been invited to every summit for the past 3 centuries. Our failure to respond was due to a technical error in your communication system. We are here to correct that oversight." The station's defensive systems were powering up automatically, but Admiral Webb's next words stopped. "Them. We come in peace and in accordance with galactic law. We request permission to dock and address the assembly on matters Concerning species recognition and territorial sovereignty. 700 ships.
800.
The numbers kept climbing. Chancellor Mordak had abandoned his speech and was conferring urgently with his advisors. How many ships do they have? He asked his military liaison. Still counting, Chancellor. Over 900 now. All in perfect formation. These aren't pirates or raiders. This is a formal military fleet. In the hegemony of Keth section, Commander Grak was shouting into his communication device. Alert the home fleet! We have invaders in the Sol system! But his aide looked confused. Commander, they're not in the Sol system. They're here, at Nexus Prime. 950 ships. 975. Ambassador Vextar found himself staring at the tactical display in amazement. Whatever these humans were, they had just made the most impressive entrance in Galactic Summit history. The precision of their formation was perfect, and their ships, while unfamiliar in design, were clearly military vessels. 1,000 ships confirmed, announced Nexus Prime Control, a note of awe in the controller's voice. The assembly hall fell completely silent. 1,000 warships was a significant force by any standard. Some of the smaller species didn't have 1,000 ships in their entire military. Even the major powers rarely moved fleets of that size. Nexus Prime Control, came Admiral Webb's voice again, calm and professional. We await permission to dock and address the assembly. We have no hostile intent, but we do have matters of galactic law to discuss. Chancellor Mordak looked around the assembly hall at the faces of thousands of delegates. Fear, confusion, and curiosity mixed in equal measure. In 800 years of galactic summits, nothing like this had ever happened. Admiral Webb, Mordak said, his voice being broadcast to the human fleet, as Chancellor of the Galactic Council, I extend temporary diplomatic immunity to your delegation. You may dock and address the assembly. However, your fleet must remain in defensive positions only. Understood, Chancellor. We will dock one ship only. The rest of our fleet will maintain position and await your pleasure. A single human ship detached from the massive formation and approached Nexus Prime's diplomatic docking bay. As it grew larger on the view screens, delegates throughout the assembly hall studied its design. The ship was sleek but aggressive-looking, with what appeared to be multiple weapon systems built into its hull. It was smaller than the massive battleships in the fleet, but still larger than most diplomatic vessels. That's not a standard diplomatic ship, observed Commander Grak. These humans are making a statement. He was right. Everything about the human arrival was calculated to send a message. The size of the fleet, the precision of their formation, the timing of their arrival during the opening ceremonies. It all said that humanity was not asking for permission to join the galactic community. They were announcing their intention to take their place as equals. 20 minutes later, Admiral Marcus Webb walked into the assembly hall flanked by 2 other humans. The delegates fell silent as they got their first look at the species that had just announced itself to the galaxy. Humans. It appeared were bipedal like many species, with 2 arms, 2 legs, and faces not entirely unlike Zephyrians or Altarians, but there was something in their bearing that set them apart. They moved with a confidence that spoke of absolute certainty in their purpose. Admiral Webb approached the central speaking platform while his companions took positions nearby. The translator systems worked quickly to convert his words into thousands of languages. Honored delegates, Webb began, I am Admiral Marcus Webb of the United Earth Government. I stand before you today to address a serious error that has kept humanity from participating in galactic affairs for over 3 centuries. He paused, looking around the vast assembly hall at the thousands of alien faces staring back at him. 300 years ago, a survey probe classified our world as uninhabited. This was an understandable error. At the time, humanity had not yet developed spaceflight or faster-than-light communication. However, this classification was never updated as our civilization advanced. Murmurs rippled through the assembly hall. Several delegates were checking their data pads, trying to find information about this species that had apparently been forgotten by the galaxy. As a result, Webb continued, all invitations to galactic summits were broadcast to incorrect coordinates. Humanity never received a single message from the Galactic Council. We did not ignore your invitations, we never knew they existed. Commander Grak stood up in the Keth section. The Sol system has been legally assigned to the hegemony of Keth. These humans are trespassers. Webb turned to look directly at the Keth commander. Commander, we understand that galactic law requires territorial claims to be maintained through species capability assessment. Humanity is here today to demonstrate our capability to maintain sovereignty over our ancestral home. The implications were clear to everyone in the assembly hall. The 1,000 battleships waiting outside weren't just for show. They were humanity's answer to the question of whether Earth could defend itself. Chancellor Mordak leaned forward in his seat. Admiral Webb, are you claiming that humanity has the right to the Sol system despite the legal assignment to the hegemony of Keth? Chancellor, we are claiming that an administrative error cannot supersede the fundamental right of a species to their homeworld. Earth has been continuously inhabited by humans for over 200,000 years. No galactic law can change that fact. The tension in the assembly hall was becoming unbearable. Two civilizations were facing off over the ownership of an entire star system, with 1,000 human battleships as the backdrop to the dispute. Ambassador Vextar found himself admiring the humans' strategy. They had arrived with overwhelming force, but they were conducting themselves diplomatically. They weren't threatening anyone. They were simply making it clear that they would not be pushed aside. Admiral, Chancellor Mordak said carefully, what exactly is humanity requesting of this assembly? Webb's answer was simple and direct. Recognition as a sovereign species, confirmation of our right to the Sol system, and a seat on the Galactic Council befitting our capabilities. Outside the station, 1,000 human battleships waited silently in formation. Their presence a constant reminder that humanity had announced itself to the galaxy, not with words but with strength. The assembly hall of Nexus Prime had never been so quiet. Thousands of delegates from across the galaxy stared at Admiral Marcus Webb as he stood at the central speaking platform, his words echoing in the vast chamber. Behind him, holographic displays showed the 1,000 human battleships maintaining perfect formation around the station. Chancellor Mordak was the first to break the silence. Admiral Webb, you present us with an unprecedented situation. In 800 years of galactic summits, no species has ever challenged a legal territorial assignment with military force. With respect, Chancellor, Webb replied calmly, we are not challenging galactic law with military force. We are demonstrating that humanity has the capability to maintain sovereignty over our homeworld, as required by galactic law for species recognition. Commander Grack of the hegemony of Keth stood up abruptly, his gray skin flushed with anger. The Sol system belongs to the Keth. We will not allow these humans to steal what is legally ours. Webb turned to face the Keth commander directly. Commander Grack, I ask you, when was the last time the hegemony visited the Sol system? Have you ever sent a single ship to survey your supposed territory? Grack's hesitation was telling. The truth was that the hegemony had never bothered to visit the Sol system because they believed it was uninhabited and of little strategic value. That is irrelevant, Grack finally replied. Legal assignment does not require physical presence. Perhaps not, Webb acknowledged. But I believe galactic law also requires that territorial claims be maintained through demonstration of species capability. Are you prepared to contest humanity's claim to our ancestral home? The threat was subtle but clear. If the hegemony wanted to enforce their legal claim to Earth, they would have to do so against 1,000 human battleships. Ambassador Vextar found himself fascinated by the human negotiating style. Webb was not being aggressive or threatening. He was simply stating facts and asking reasonable questions, but the presence of the massive human fleet outside gave enormous weight to his words. Chancellor Mordak consulted with his advisors before speaking again. Admiral Webb, before we can consider your requests, we need to understand more about humanity. Your species appears in our database as primitive and non-spacefaring, yet you arrive here with advanced starships and military technology. How do we explain this discrepancy? Webb smiled slightly. Chancellor, humanity has been spacefaring for over 2 centuries. We have colonies throughout our solar system and have been developing faster-than-light technology for decades. The survey that classified us as primitive was conducted 400 years ago and was never updated. He gestured to his companions, who had been standing silently nearby. Allow me to introduce Captain Sarah Chen, who first discovered the Galactic Council communication probe at the edge of our solar system 8 months ago. It was her discovery that revealed the administrative error that has kept us isolated. Captain Chen stepped forward and bowed respectfully to the assembly. Honored delegates, when we found the council probe, we were amazed to learn that we were not alone in the galaxy. But we were also concerned to discover that our solar system had been given away in our absence. A wave of murmurs swept through the assembly hall. Several delegates were frantically checking their databases, trying to find more information about this species that had apparently been developing in isolation for centuries. Ambassador Thranks of the Altarian Federation stood up. Admiral Webb, your fleet is impressive. But surely you understand that arriving at a diplomatic summit with 1,000 warships could be seen as an act of aggression? Ambassador Thranks, Webb replied, humanity comes in peace, but we also come as equals. For too long, our species has been absent from galactic affairs due to an administrative error. We will not allow that error to cost us our homeworld. He paused, looking around the vast assembly hall. We are not here to conquer or to threaten. We are here to take our rightful place in the galactic community, but we will do so as a sovereign species, not as subjects of another empire. Chancellor Mordak leaned back in his chair, considering the situation. The humans had put the Galactic Council in an impossible position. They couldn't simply ignore 1,000 battleships, but they also couldn't abandon centuries of galactic law. Admiral Webb, the Chancellor said finally, what you are asking for would require emergency legislation, species recognition, territorial reassignment, council membership. These are not decisions that can be made quickly. Chancellor, Webb replied, humanity has waited 3 centuries for recognition. We understand that legal procedures take time, but we also hope that the Council understands that we will not wait indefinitely for justice. Commander Grack stood up again, his voice filled with anger. This is extortion. These humans are threatening the entire Galactic Council. Webb's response was immediate and firm. Commander, we threaten no one. We simply exist. The question before this assembly is whether the Galactic Council will recognize that existence, or whether they will continue to pretend that Earth is uninhabited. Ambassador Vexstar found himself admiring the human position despite himself. They were absolutely right that they had been wronged by the administrative error, and their demonstration of military capability was exactly what galactic law required for species recognition. Admiral Webb, Vexstar said, standing up in the Zephyrian section, what assurances can you give this assembly that humanity will abide by galactic law if your requests are granted? Ambassador Vexstar, Webb replied, humanity seeks nothing more than the same rights and responsibilities enjoyed by every other member of the Galactic Council. We wish to trade, to explore, to contribute to galactic civilization. We have no territorial ambitions beyond our own solar system, and if the hegemony of Keth refuses to acknowledge your claim to the Sol system, Webb's expression grew serious. Then we will defend our home. But we hope it does not come to that. The assembly hall erupted in discussions as delegates conferred with their advisors and contacted their home governments. The situation was unprecedented, and no one was quite sure how to proceed. Chancellor Mordak called for a recess to allow for consultation. As delegates filed out of the assembly hall, Admiral Webb and his companions were escorted to diplomatic quarters to wait. Over the next 6 hours, frantic negotiations took place throughout Nexus Prime. Emergency communications were sent to governments across the galaxy as species. Leaders debated how to respond to humanity's dramatic entrance. The hegemony of Keth was mobilizing their fleets, but several other species were urging restraint. The Zephyrian Republic, which had long opposed Keth expansion, saw an opportunity to limit their rivals' influence. The Altarian Federation was intrigued by the prospect of a new trading partner. When the assembly reconvened, Chancellor Mordak looked tired but determined. Admiral Webb, he began, after extensive consultation, the Galactic Council has reached a preliminary decision. We acknowledge that an administrative error prevented humanity from participating in galactic affairs. We also acknowledge that your species has demonstrated the capability required for species recognition. A hush fell over the assembly hall. However, the Chancellor continued, the legal claim of the hegemony of Keth to the Sol system cannot simply be dismissed. We propose a compromise. Admiral Webb waited patiently for the Chancellor to continue. The Galactic Council hereby recognizes humanity as a sovereign species. We acknowledge your right to represent your interests in galactic affairs. However, the territorial dispute over the Sol system must be resolved through proper legal channels. Commander Grack started to object, but the Chancellor held up his hand. Commander, the Council also recognizes that the hegemony's claim to the Sol system was based on the assumption that it was uninhabited. Given that this assumption is clearly false, we call upon both species to negotiate a peaceful resolution. Admiral Webb considered the proposal carefully. It wasn't everything humanity had hoped for, but it was a significant victory. They had achieved species recognition and opened the door to negotiating the return of their solar system. Chancellor, Webb said finally, humanity accepts the Council's recognition of our sovereignty. We are prepared to negotiate with the hegemony regarding the Sol system, provided that such negotiations acknowledge our status as the indigenous inhabitants of Earth. Commander Grack looked around the assembly hall, realizing that he had lost the support of most other species. The hegemony could still press their legal claim, but it would mean fighting not just humanity but potentially several council members who supported the human position. The hegemony will consider negotiations, Grack said reluctantly. Chancellor Mordak nodded. Then let it be recorded that on this day, the 851st Galactic Summit, humanity was officially recognized as a sovereign species and granted full membership in the Galactic Council. The assembly hall erupted in a mixture of cheers and concerned murmurs. History had been made and everyone present knew it. Admiral Webb bowed respectfully to the assembly. On behalf of humanity, I thank the Galactic Council for this recognition. We look forward to contributing to galactic peace and prosperity. As Webb and his companions left the assembly hall, the T